Hey guys, Captain Retro bringing you the next installment of the history of the arcade in Attica. Today's topic is all of the arcade in Attica Steam era engines, as a lack of photographs publicly available and a lack of stories to tell, as well as lack of footage, means that there's not a terrible lot to say about each individual locomotive. The most important are by far likely number 8 and number 6, and we'll get to why. However, in this video, you will likely only see about a photo of each, as well as their tech specs and other stuff mentioned in the Edward Lewis book. If you want to see more photos, there are more photos. However, I don't want to make it where the book is null or void, and therefore I will just show you a photograph of each, and we will move on in sequential order. So, for those of you who don't know, the arcade in Attica in its most current form was established in 1917. It was the culmination of the efforts of all of the local farmers and workmen and business owners to keep the railway afloat when the predecessor railroad, the Buffalo, Attica, and Arcade, basically folded and filed for bankruptcy. Rather than lose everything, all of the towns along the line got together, all of the wealthy businessmen got together and kept the railroad afloat through a new holding company, and that railroad has been surviving up until today just fine. Though through a series of expenses and the like, there have obviously had to have some sacrifices made, such as the sale of the steam era locomotives, although personally I would rather point the finger at a man with a mustache, as scrap metal was very, very, very high demand during the 1940s. Starting it with number 1, of course. Number 1 was a 260 wheel type built by Baldwin in 1894. It was acquired in 1917, leaning to the fact that either it had to have been in very early acquisition or was likely a BA&A engine from the beginning. It was sold in 1940. Again, I'll cite the man with a stash. And that one was an ex-Toronto, Hamilton, and Buffalo locomotive. Number 2 was also a 260, although it was built by Elco, and this locomotive was built in 1901. It was acquired in 1917, the same year as number 1, leading me to, again, believe that it could have been an ex-BA&A engine already on the property. It was sold in 1928, and this locomotive was an ex-New York Central. Now, this locomotive does not have many photos of it at all, even within the private archives of those obsessed with the arcade in Attica. Number 3 was a 460 type, built in 1892 by the Cook Works. It was acquired in 1917, same as the last two, and it was a Lehigh and Hudson River locomotive before it became Arcade in Attica. It was acquired again in 1917 and sold in 1923. Number 4 was a 460 Baldwin. It was acquired in 1922. It was an ex-Genesee and Wyoming engine, and it was sold only a year later in 1923. This locomotive was built in 1894, and basically I would say imagine number 6. However, the build date likely means that there would be some substantial differences. I have not seen any photographs of number 4, as it was only there a year. Number 5 was another 460, however, built by Pittsburgh. It was acquired in 1926 and sold in 1934. It was XLH and STL. That one was built in 1892, and number 6 is one of interest. It was built in 1907. It was a 460 Baldwin, and it was acquired in 1928 and sold 1948, a year after number 111 was delivered. This engine was an ex-Illinois Central, and is one that is probably the most frequently seen when looking up pre-diesel stuff for the arcade in Attica. This locomotive did in fact pull a couple of rail enthusiast trips. There is footage of one of these trips on YouTube, I do believe, where it pulled the original 2 coaches, one of which was also a ex-BA&A coach, and 2 Pennsylvania gondolas. And this locomotive is rather iconic for having 2 tanks on either side or a tank rather, on the side, either side of the boiler. It makes for a very iconic look, and it was also nicknamed the fire starter as it would start fires along the track. This was the ANA's backup engine, and I presume that would be because it was the newest built, with a build date of 1907. That is the highest of any of the pre-diesel era locomotives. Number 7 is a Brooks built 260 that was built in 1900. It was acquired in 1930. It was ex-Buffalo, Rochester, and Pittsburgh, and it was sold in 1942. Again, man with a stash. Number 8 was a 260 Brooks, same as number 7, built in 1897. It was acquired in 1930, also an ex-BRMP, or Buffalo, Rochester, and Pittsburgh locomotive. It was sold in 1943. The interesting note on number 8 was the fact that when I originally sat down to do this recording about 2 weeks ago, I had added a video onto my Watch Later by the Niagara chapter, Living with Steam YouTube channel, which covers the rail recordings of John Prophet and several other club members that range all the way back from 1935 all the way until presumably present day. However, the video in question was from 1938 till 1941, and upon viewing this footage after putting it off for a week, I was rather pleased to find that it does contain Arcade and Attica black and white steam era footage that shows the engine house and the locomotives. The locomotives in question are number 8 at least, and are from a 1939 trip featuring 2 coaches and 2 gondolas. The footage is something to behold, as it also shows briefly the rail bus the ANA used and got rid of rather quickly, and it also shows the shop with 2 locomotives out front. However, at a glance, I was not able to discern which locomotive it was for sure, and therefore don't want to speak on the matter. I'm hoping that as that was a part 1, there are more parts added, and we'll be able to get more footage. However, considering I presume that in the shot with the 2 remaining locomotives, it had to have been either number 7 or number 6, as much in the same way that number 110 was ousted from the sheds, and 111 would follow suit in 2014. The engine house has always been 3 bays, and thus they have never had more than 2 or 3 steam locomotives active at any one time. At least not that I'm aware of. It is possible that they had some sort of shop holdover area in Attica, but I have not seen any photographs of that or any mention of it. A couple of very interesting things to note. On the Arcade and Attica's steam era, the largest train that the Arcade and Attica moved was a 50-car consist of limestone, which was taken all the way from Attica, and cars were cut along the way to the point that 25 of them had been removed. Number 5 was on the lead with a second engine behind, or in the middle rather. And this was the longest train on the Arcade and Attica, I think, to date as well. In a unspecified era, there was a brake fail at a Java Center siding, which sent number 1 flying off the switch and derailing, laying on its side for some time. As I said, definitely pick up an Edward Lewis book or a Kenneth Springerth book, because they have a heck of a lot of old steam era material that just can't be found online. And I don't want to spoil the entire book and disclose all of the photographs in an effort to make it too easy, so to speak. And so, with that all being established, that was the Arcade and Attica's 8 different steam locomotives, which they had in the pre-1967 era of '62 era of passenger steam tourism trains. It is a shame, however, that World War II had to happen, as not only was it a horrific world war, it also meant that that metal was very sought after, and with number one having been out of service for at least a couple years, boarded up and moved around in various locations, the railroad seemed to prefer getting paid for the scrap rather than keep a locomotive sitting around that wasn't really doing anything at the time. I can only imagine an alternate take on how things could have gone, where number 6 or even one of the older locomotives would have stayed around until the present day to haul some seriously historical events, like excursion events. I do question how much of a maintenance headache keeping one of these locomotives that were built in the 1800s would be to keep them running, but I suggest that the historical value might have well been worth the expense. However, that is for us to just speculate and dream on, because that's not what happened. As a matter of fact, the last steam locomotive was gone by 1948, and steam wouldn't see the arcade in Attica again until 1962 in the form of Boyne City number 18. And another shout out just at the end of this video, that I am really excited to see what type of content gets posted by the Living with Steam YouTube channel. It's entirely possible that all the Arcade Attica footage has been posted. However, considering that the footage is from a 1939 excursion and a separate video posted by them is from 1940 and features number 6 and not number 8, I can only hopefully speculate that there will be more footage shown to us in the coming months to coming years. So we can just wait here and find out. So I hope you all have enjoyed learning about the old Arcade and Attica steam locomotives in an era all but forgotten by those who are obsessed with it. To many, the Arcade in Attica is iconic for its diesels. However, much like with most railroads, the Arcade in Attica used to be only steam, and in a poetic sense, it is rather ironic that they decided to ditch passenger cars and steam locomotives only to get them back in 1962 for the sole reason of tourist excursions. So, in the meantime, I hope you've enjoyed. The next video, which will likely take me a while to produce, is going to be on rolling stock. And that's going to be a doozy because I am not establishing a decade era. I am doing everything, and therefore it's going to be quite the info dump. So, with nothing else to say, I hope you all have enjoyed. I hope everyone enjoys watching, considers subscribing, considers giving me a like. It really shows me how the videos are doing, which ones that you prefer, the narration style, and it just basically shows me that people are enjoying the content that I put out. So, thank you all for watching, and I will see you on the next one.